How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Ultimate Hunter Shooting Sports YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about how to shoot Ultimate Hunter.
Impact!
Impact! Impact!
Helps you win, it helps you hunt.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about is stage format. Regardless of which Ultimate Hunter shooting sport you're competing in, whether it's centerfire, rimfire, archery, handgun, or muzzleloader, there will always be 3 targets per stage: a close, intermediate, and a far target, and they'll always fall within different distance brackets depending on what sport you're actually shooting. But across the board, the close target will always be marked with a red placard, the intermediate target will always be marked with a white placard, and the far target will always be marked with a blue placard. So as long as you can see those colors, you'll know what distance bracket, what order, and what target value that target has associated with it. At each stage from your start gate, you should be able to see target pointers. Now, ours are made out of rebar. They're always welded at a 90-degree angle, and they are color-coded to the target that they point at, and they should point directly at each target in order to help you find it. So if you stand directly behind these target pointers and just make a straight line up from them, and a lot of times they'll have some angle to them as well, so you can tell how high that target's going to be. Make a straight line up and just keep going up until you find the placard. It should look like it's within 10 feet in a two-dimensional plane from the shooter's perspective. While we're on the topic of the target pointers, there is a penalty associated with touching or moving those pointers, just because they are so vital to equity between shooters in finding those targets. Suffice to say, guys, don't touch the pointers. Now, once you've spotted those pointers from your starting point, your start wickets, you should also be able to see a yellow roped off area, which you can probably see behind me here. This is one large area, and because all 3 pointers are clustered together associated with this one area, that tells me that you can choose any position within that area to engage all 3 targets. If there are separate roped off areas, your pointers will correspond with the targets that are supposed to be shot from those individual areas. So if you've got, let's say, a red and a white pointer next to one area and a blue pointer next to another area, well, that tells me that the red and the white target have to be shot from within that boundary of the yellow rope next to them, and the blue target needs to be shot from that other corresponding area. The way that we guide shooters from one stage to another is we will use pin flags. Typically we use pink and yellow because they're bright, they're easy to see, and they're very different colors from one another, as opposed to, say, orange and yellow or pink and red. And what we'll do is we'll follow pink to a stage and then yellow to the next. And it's just a really easy way to keep track of where we're going, and they're temporary. We can pull them up really easily, reuse them later, alter the course without leaving anything behind. Another thing you're likely to happen upon are stage number markers. They may be along the roadway, or they'll be along the path as you're following those pin flags, and those will tell you that you are now entering stage 1 through 5, 1 through 10, whatever the case may be. You'll actually continue until you see an orange cone, for example. Whatever that match director is using to delineate your staging area, that's what you're going to stop. We use orange cones, so for example, if I'm going to shoot stage 1, I'll follow my pink flags until I get to the stage 1 marker. That tells me that I'm going the right direction, and I'll continue to follow those flags until I get to that orange cone, because I know that's what we're using to delineate a staging area. That staging area is where the entire squad will hang out until they're called up one by one by the RO in order to go shoot that stage. After you finish shooting that stage, we'll try to find an area that's 10 yards away, within eyesight, but far enough away that the shooter won't be distracted as you're reloading magazines or getting your gear ready for the next stage. So we want them within eye shot but not earshot, so people can watch the techniques and tactics that others apply as they're shooting, how they're building positions, how they're using their gear. We've found that it's a lot more educational if shooters are able to actually watch other people go through. And we try to do that as long as they won't be distracted by the noise of the previous shooters. At those staging and gathering areas, you will typically find your rifle safe area. So you'll take your rifle and you'll set it perpendicular to that stick, because that is what has been determined as a safe direction for your muzzle to point. That's where you'll set your rifles before you shoot and after you've shot a stage. So now we're going to move on to scoring. In the centerfire version, your targets will always be 12-inch by 12-inch plates, hung as diamonds, it works out to about 17 inches and change, corner to corner, both vertically and horizontally. Those targets will be the same size, whether it's the close, intermediate, or the far target. One adjustment to the scoring that we have made recently is the initial point values for each target. As you can see on this score sheet, your red target is initially worth 30 points, your white target is initially worth 60, and the blue target is initially worth 120. The reason that we increased the initial point value for each target is to put more emphasis on getting that first round hit. So as you miss, the first one costs you 2/3 of your potential points, and then it's half every single time after that, down to but never below 10. Now for each stage, you'll have 180 seconds to complete the stage, that's your par time, or when you hit the farthest target, that's when your time will stop, the time will be recorded. From that point, we'll tally up the total sum of the points you accumulated for that stage, and then divide those points by the time, multiply that result by 10, just so we always end up with a nice positive number, and that's your score for the stage. It's what's known as hit factor scoring, and what it boils down to is the number of points you accumulated per second. A faster raw time is going to be better. That factors strongly into your score, in addition to the first round hits. So we want first round hits as quickly as possible. That's what's going to win this game for you. The number one safety infraction that we see at these matches is not having the chamber of your firearm open when it should be. The only time your chamber should be closed is when you're in a position where you're actively ready to send a round down range. If I'm running a semi-auto, we're going to start you with the chamber open, magazine inserted typically, but chamber open. Once you get to the first target, you can send the bolt home. After that point, we're not going to make you lock the chamber open in between each shooting position adjustment that you're making. Instead, we want you to activate the manual safety. So let's say, for example, on an AR, what I'm going to do is I'll engage the first target, I'll run the safety, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to loudly say, loud enough for the RO to hear, even with earmuffs or plugs, I'm going to say safe or gun safe. It is the RO's responsibility at that point to repeat that back to me, safe or gun safe. That's establishing two-way communication that we're following the established safety procedures, even though my chamber is closed and there's probably a live round in the gun.
Safe!
Safe.
It's kind of a tough habit for people to get into, but it helps us maintain a much safer range even when we're under pressure on the clock in an active environment. So what we're going to talk about now is some gear rules. So we do have fairly low weight limits. Our big game division is limited at 13 pounds, everything on the rifle and an empty magazine inserted as you would be shooting it. So if you're going to run a sling, that sling has to be on the rifle. Now for the varmint division, our limit is 10 pounds. In addition to that, we do have an approved cartridge list and velocity limits for each division. And the reason for that is, even though we shoot half-inch thick AR 500 plate, speed kills steel. And remember, our closest possible target is 100 yards. Because we have those close engagement distances, we have to put caps on the velocity. Another thing we don't allow is integrated rangefinders, whether they're mounted to the rifle or actually integrated into the scope. The reason for that is if they're set up correctly, it becomes so much of a gear advantage time-wise that everyone would need one in order to be competitive, right? And that's what we want to avoid with this sport. We never want it to become a gear race. So we specifically disallow things like that would automatically create such an inherent advantage that you would have to have that in order to be competitive. As of the time that we're filming this video, we do not allow any bags that don't serve a purpose outside of being a shooting rest. Now, this is one of the ones that ruffles feathers quite a bit, but there are ways to work around it. Something like this makes a pretty good rear bag. I run this loose enough that I can almost always get my binos underneath the rear of that rifle in a situation where I need it and create a solid rear rest here, because this serves a purpose outside of just being a shooting bag. Another really good one is a small medical kit that actually contains medical supplies. You can take a hoodie, roll it up into its own hood so it makes this nice compact little fluffy ball, cinch it tight so it doesn't fall apart. That's legal because it serves a purpose outside of being a shooting bag. Now, what we don't allow, and we check for this, is someone taking a first aid kit and then filling it with airsoft BBs or sand or anything else like that and saying, well, it's not a bag, it's a medical kit. Yeah, but it's full of the same material that would be used to fill a shooting bag. So essentially you've created the same thing. So we give specific workarounds to that rule. You just need a little bit of creativity and find something that would be dual purpose. Now, when it comes to tripods, again, we're still trying to avoid a gear race. There are plenty of videos online of people shooting MOA or smaller targets once they get the rifle set up in a tripod just by touching the trigger. I want to see what you guys can do without that tool. Match directors would have the chance to set up stages where anyone who has and is allowed a tripod is going to have a substantial inherent advantage in engaging those targets over someone who does not have that. In addition, there are multiple other rifle sports that allow and really strongly facilitate their use. We're separating ourselves from them, again, by taking away the use of that tool. I want to see what you can do without the tripod. Now, to the suppressor issue. This is one that people get ruffled about because they say, well, this is a hunting-based sport, and I hunt with suppressors. You can do it all across the West, across most of the country now. And they're right, and I hunt with a suppressor. The issue is consistency with recording the actual shot. Because of how some of these stages lay out, there will be situations where the RO cannot get close enough to the shooter to reliably record shots with effective suppressors and bolt guns in particular. And if we can't record that last shot, then one of the two major aspects of your score, your time and your points, is not accurate. And I know that there are timers out there that can be set very, very sensitively. The problem with that is now we're increasing the chance of an inadvertent activation. Let's say we pick up that last round, but before the RO can actually record that, they just brush something that's on their body or a branch or something else, or they jar it enough to record what it thinks is a shot. Well, now we have to try and figure out what the actual time was, which creates arguments. And because these stages are supposed to be shot blind, a reshoot gives you a substantial advantage. So it just brings up so many other issues that it's not worth it to us, just from the standpoint of consistency, to allow suppressors at this time in this game. So guys, now we're going to talk a little bit about the penalties you might run into or encounter most commonly in, UHSS. The first of which being a boundary penalty. That goes back to the yellow rope, our boundary rope for each shooting area that we were talking about. You and all of your gear have to be inside of that rope, or I should say can't be touching anything outside of that rope as you break a shot. And if there are multiple shooting areas on one stage, you and all your stuff have to be inside the area corresponding to the target that you're engaging when you engage it. If you're faulting the boundary or your gear is faulting the boundary and you break a shot, even if you hit the target, it will be counted as a miss. And once you've broken a shot while faulting the boundary, the RO should loudly say boundary. Just supposed to let you know that that shot did not count, and it did not count because you were faulting the boundary. Now, if you break a shot while faulting the boundary and it's a miss, well, then it's counted like a miss, just as any other miss would be. Now, one of the new things that we're working on implementing at the time of this video being filmed is allowing ROs to help you out as to where you might be faulting that boundary. And the way that will manifest is when the RO calls boundary, after you've taken a shot while faulting the boundary or while your gear was faulting the boundary, they will be allowed to point at where the boundary fault occurred. So if it's your foot being over the line, they can point down at your foot. If it's your gear being left in the wrong boundary, or you might have lost something on the way that does count as a boundary violation, they can point at your piece of gear. If you're in the wrong area, they can point towards the correct area. So that's one of the new things that we're going to implement to allow ROs to help out the shooter a little bit without going into the realm of coaching a shooter. Now, some of the common questions we get on faulting the boundary are, how strict do we play it? If somebody's foot is just on the line of that rope and not really encroaching over, I'm not going to call that. In the instance where the boundary rope isn't nailed down very tautly, and it's not tight between the points where it's secured, and somebody's foot is able to accidentally or intentionally push that rope and kind of adjust where the boundary actually lies, as long as they don't go over that boundary rope, that's on me as a stage designer and as setup crew. I should have nailed down that rope in a way that wasn't possible. So as long as they do that without actually going over the rope, it's not a boundary violation. Now, as parts of your gear, like let's say the strap of a backpack, end up laying over that line, now we're faulting the boundary. We have to draw the line somewhere, but we try to be reasonable. If my muzzle is protruding beyond that, not a boundary violation, because I'm not touching anything on the other side of it. We're not counting the airspace. Now, it's also not uncommon for somebody to spot, let's say, the red and the blue, and just get tunnel vision on those two targets, and they skip over the white. If I hit the red target, for example, and then hit the blue target, well, that first hit on blue, because I skipped white, will simply count as a miss on white. So I've lost 2/3 of my points on white. Now I still need to go back and shoot white, or change my shooting area if I'm in the wrong spot for that target and re-engage white. So there is a point and time penalty on white, but there is no penalty added on top of that. So if you are engaging targets out of the correct order, which again is always near to far, red, then white, then blue, after you take the first shot out of order, the RO can say, wrong target. That's the correction that they'll give you. That lets you know that you engaged the target out of order. Now, we won't mix this up with, being in the wrong area. That will still simply be a boundary violation. But in the case where a shooter engages targets out of order, now they'll actually get some guidance on that, versus what it used to be, which was the RO would just stay silent and not call an impact if the shooter hits. As you make scoring hits, the RO is supposed to loudly say, impact. That's the only correction or information that they're supposed to give the shooter. We don't tell them they're missing high or right or left or low. If it's a new or junior shooter at a local match, let them know. Give those guys some leeway, because we are in the entertainment business and we want those people to come back. All right, guys, so now we're going to go ahead and actually shoot through this stage as we would during a match. I'll kind of talk through everything that I'm doing and that the RO would be, the commands they would be giving as we go through. So I've arrived at my start gate. I'm at my RO here. The RO would say, make ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out and stow my chamber flag, get my scope caps open, and insert my magazine, but leave my bolt open. Once it looks like I've got all my stuff ready and good to go, the RO is going to say, are you ready? I'm going to give them a strong nod or a yes or both, and the RO will say,
stand by.
And my time has started. So now I have 180 seconds to complete this stage. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is come to these pointers, find my targets, find a physical reference, and remember the range, and therefore my dope for the white and the blue. So I've got my red, there's my white. Okay, I've got my range. There's my blue. And I've got my range. So knowing where those targets are, I think that I can shoot all three from one spot here on this rock. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So build a position for the red. Okay, there it is. Close my bolt. Readjust the head a little bit. And I'm going to move on to the white. You can see that I'm keeping my bolt open in between each actual shooting position, right? Okay, impact. Bolt is open. Got the blue in the scope. Impact. So now that I'm done, the RO is probably going to check the time and they're going to say unload and show clear. At that point, I'm going to remove my magazine. I'm going to reinstall my chamber flag, and the RO will declare the range is clear. At this point, we're going to double check the time. So we've got a 67-66, and with those first round hits on all 3 targets, we'll take you to the score sheet now and show you how the scoring works on that. All right, guys, so we've got the new updated score sheets with our updated initial target values here, and we're going to show you how that stage would look on a score sheet. So the first thing we're going to do is put our time here, 67-66, and then we had a first round hit for all 3 targets. If I would have missed, we would have put zeros here until I actually hit, and you can see that the point value decreases on the score sheet with misses, but never below 10 points. So because we've got first round hits on all 3 targets, that puts us at a total of 210 here. So we take our points divided by the time, and that gives us a hit factor. Now, don't forget, we got to multiply by 10, so we have a nice positive number, but we'll go ahead and do that really quickly because I can't do that math in my head. That ends up with a 31.04 after a little bit of rounding after the remainder there. And that is the hit factor or the score for this stage. So as I shoot each stage, we record the time and the points for each. We do that same easy math, and we'll end up with a hit factor for every single stage. At the end of the day, the way we end up with our final score is we add up our hit factor for every stage, and we just put the sum right there, and that's our score. All right, guys, so here we have a good example of a stage with 2 separate shooting positions. So here are the start sticks, and from there I can see that the red and the white pointer line up with this roped off area, and the blue pointer corresponds with that shooting area, which tells me red and white need to be shot from here, and the blue target needs to be shot from over there. Again, red first, I'll make sure I'm inside the shooting area. All right, bipod's a little high for red, but I think it'll work well for white. Backed. And we'll come up onto here. Try to get the right elevation for white. Got too much magnification is what's going on here. I need to lay up across here a little bit better. There we are, got the cant set correctly. Okay, bad recoil control, but I got my hit, so I'm gonna go ahead and open my bolt again. My alarm is going off, so we got a little distraction, but that's all right. Okay, on target 2.3, we'll try that. Impact. So now that I'm finished, the RO will say unload and show clear. I'm gonna drop my magazine, show an empty chamber, reinsert my chamber flag, and the RO will say, okay, the range is clear. And the time, we had a 102.36. So a couple hitches in getting into position and maintaining recoil control there. But again, a shot for shot first round run in 102. So a little slower than I would like, but accuracy wise, still a very good stage. So we'll go ahead and shoot this with the AR, tally both scores, see how we turned out.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Stand by.
Safe.
Safe. Safe. If you're finished, unload and show clear.
Okay, we are clear. All right, guys, couple misses on that one, but we did get the last shot on this one, 76.99. So what we'll be able to do is show you the effect of those first round misses when we get to the score sheet.
Make ready. Are you ready?
Ready.
Stand by.
Safe.
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 All right.
If you're finished, unload and show clear.
Okay, guys. So we've got 3 shots on there, 61.05. We can compare this run to a run that had a few misses, and that'll give a good illustration of how that scoring is affected when you miss those first rounds. But we'll go ahead and go to the score sheet now, do some math. All right, guys, so here we can see the first stage that we took video of, the stage with the AR with 2 separate shooting positions where I had those first round misses on white and blue, the clean stage with the AR, and then the clean stage with the bolt gun. And here you can really see the difference in, point loss with those first round misses, because we got a 31, a 34, and a 20. And just those 2 misses right there on the white and the blue drops us clear down to an 11.69. So we do the same math, points divided by time times 10 is our hit factor. And then I've already compiled these 4 stages, so our 3104, our 1169, our 3440, and our 2052 for a combined score of 97.65. So you can really see how important those first round hits are, regardless of the actual raw time, because here we had a 102 raw time versus a 76 raw time, but those 2 misses took us from a 2052 clear down to an 1169. So I hope we've done a pretty good job of covering the basics of the makeup of this sport, how stages are formatted, how scoring works, our most common range commands, the procedures, gear rules that typically come up a lot. I hope I've done a pretty good job of wrapping all that together. All of the rule books for each individual sport are available at ultimate-hunter.com. You'll just go to the type of firearm or the type of weapon that you're going to be using, to hunt. So let's say archery. You click on the archery menu item and you'll go down to rules. There'll be a full PDF there explaining the rules. So everything's available online, but if between the rule books online and this video you still have questions or clarifications that you want to make, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Email contact@ultimate-hunter.com and I'll answer your questions. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope you seek us out and start shooting some Ultimate Hunter matches. And never forget, I am always willing, if you've got the facility for it and a group of friends that want to try this out, Whether it's rimfire or archery or centerfire, whatever sport you want to try, let me know. I'll bring all the stuff to you. I'll travel to where you are. I'll help you set up and run the first one just to get you guys going. I try to facilitate new clubs as much as possible. So don't be afraid to reach out, guys.